Hi, so as we continued yesterday, I'm just going to do the repeat video so I can upload. Basically, I started with the same scene so for the dragon from last time. You can also go over the tutorial from the week before. It's the same lighting, nothing changed. I just here, the only thing that changed, which is quite major, we uploaded the model with the textures and all the materials. Now in this video, I will not really go much over the materials. I'll just really briefly explain them. And Ishai will upload this week video specifically about how to set up this material or and explanations about it. So let's start. When I started with the scene, I just now changed the model. And I already did a pre-render of it, how it comes out directly when I just plug it into the old lighting that we had last time. So this is what I get. I'm still not happy with it. Now, of course, now we need to work on the lighting and adjust them because the material changed. I will brighten a few lights just quickly, but of course with your models, you'll need to do this more precise. So if I go, I will start with this slide. I'll open the attributes. And maybe I will take this up to 24. Let's try that. And this one also. Okay, I'm just looking around the scene. I think we'll also work a little bit on those lights. I'm just scaling them down a bit. Now this you need to see while working, so it'll be good to see what the render brings. So I just a little bit increased here and on this area as well, the light. I would work on it more, and I'll point out the light in the back and the wings, but for now, not to spend too much time on the here on lighting. What we're going to do today is basically we're going to go over a little bit about the lighting, a bit about the materials, but like I said, Ishai will upload a video we'll create the AUVs. We'll go over the render settings then. Majority what we'll do is we'll render and bring it to After Effects for compositing and see how to composite, which layers we need for such a thing. So I'll just work a little bit more on the lights. I will pause this. Okay, so I'm also taking the back. Okay, so yeah, in my render I have it a bit done with more attention, but we will see the final result from that. Okay, so after you went through all the lights, let's just see a little bit about this material. So I will open the Hypershade. What we use is a normal AI standard material, but we created with Subsurface and the maps. Again, like I said, I will just show this very quickly here, what we have. So here we have our textures. So we have normals, we have the colors, we have roughness, and specs. Now, we added here a mixer, a blender. Shai will explain it. And this is basically by UVs because we have the nails of the dragon. We want to get a different properties. So we just created a kind of a mask and a mixer that gives out whatever we choose here on a slider, more or less, so we can control those layers. Now, if I just go over the material, what in essence we have the color map connected. And we have in full weight. For the specular, we have a map connected for specular and for roughness as well. And IOR we left. And also very important, we have subsurface maps connected. This is actually the same maps with some tweaks. Ishai will go over this. I think that's it. And normals, of course. Whereas the normals, geometry. So we have the normals connected. And remember, with normals, you always need to, and I'll show it here, the connector, this has to be tangent space normals. Okay, so this is enough for now for materials. In essence, you can also just create a normal AI standard material, connect a color map to it, work around the specular to get different results. But of course, all those maps are made in Substance. We will show in the next video. So after the maps, I will go back to my camera view. I set up the same camera. I will just tweak it a little bit. Okay, just got a bit more straight angle in it, and I will lock it by keyframing it as well as locking it here. Okay, got the camera locked, worked on the lights, so now I'll just do the render again. So for example, we have this render. Now let's just start going about what we have for now is only the beauty, so only the color layer. So we're going to create, now this we found to be the best AUVs that we like to work with, but of course you can use many more layers, and I will just go now to the render settings. We get a default to see the AUVs. So let's open the render settings, and the ones I'm going to start with, like I showed last time, but we'll add more, is we will just get the specular direct, specular indirect, SSS, which is Subsurface Scattering, and I will also like to take the Z. The Z is for depth. It'll give us afterwards in compositing the ability to do depth of field or focus effects. So when I selected these ones, I just move them out to the list, and I have them here. Now I need another one, which is the AO, so I need to create a custom one. The way to create the AO is to click on Add Custom. I will give it the name AO, Ambient Occlusion. Create. Now once I have the AO, it's set here, I'll just click on this arrow drop down here and say Select Driver. I just need to connect with Ctrl-A open, of course. So I have the AOV, or I need to go all the way to the end. You need to find it, AI AOV AO. So this is the one we need, and you have here custom AOV shader. So that's what we need to connect to it. When you select the driver, it might open you a different one, but you just need to get to the one that you named. Custom AOV, I will just click here on the checker, and I will go to the Arnold shaders AI Ambient Occlusion. So this will give us the ambient occlusion. So just to notice a bit of the things with the ambient occlusion, the samples is the quality, the noise that we go. I would leave everything at start on default. The spread is how ambient occlusion is not shadow, it just gives the definition of the 3D. Every time a shape intersects with another shape or comes closer, it creates this dark path with it. It's a very nice effect, you shouldn't overuse it, but it really pops out the 3D feel of the model. The more it's spread, the more soft it is, the less it's less. Now, the near clip and far clip are also very important. These are the distances that it will create the AO. Let's see now the AO layer while I'm talking. I will start rendering it, and now when I open this, I should have all those layers in the drop down. So if I look at the AO, we see we get a relatively decent white with a bit of emphasis on where the model shape is. I will play around with it a bit. Now you can also do this, the nice power in compositing later, we can tweak around with the colors, but I will go something like 200 on the far clip. And I think I would leave it at that for now. Now it's still noisy, but I get a bit more definitions here. I guess it needed to go. You will see it like, you should get details everywhere that you're interested in. So this is the first layer that we added, the AO. While it renders, I'll show all the layers. The Z, you will see here as white. That's not a mistake. It's a float, and we will open it up. There is actually something rendered here. You don't see it in the preview. Specular direct, this is the direct specularity. So, of course, if I worked more on the light, I will get some more here, but for now, for this test, it's okay. Now, this is while Arnold is still rendering. The indirect is all the specularity coming indirectly after the light hits, and the subsurface scattering. So subsurface scattering is basically this effect, like for example skin from humans. If you put a flashlight behind somebody's ear, you will see through the skin. So we also have maps that we connect what's inside it, and we get a map, if you see here, that this is more transparent, I guess, translucent. Now for this to work, another thing that we must have, I will press stop, in the render setting, and I will get back to AUVs. In the Arnold render settings, we have them on very low, yeah, just for testing. So we have the A, which is general for the quality, the noise of it. Diffuse, specular, and now before we didn't have transmission in the subsurface scattering, so now I put it on 1. Later in the final render, we will have this higher number, but for now this is enough. Now just to show something about how to work with this to get to the right numbers here. So what I would usually do is, for example, if I create an AUV, I'll create a diffuse one. So we just get the diffuse color. Here's a diffuse, I will add that. We don't need it for the final render, it's the same as color, but we can just add it. If I will go to the render settings, and I will take now the diffuse to 1, specular to 1, let's see what we get. If I will now click on a render. Now these are details more that you need to see on your computers, and of course the details, but what happens now is that the image is rendering, but it's still, even the parts of the render, is still very grainy, noisy. I know that I'm working now, I'm on the subsurface of course, so I need to go to the diffuse, that it puts it out. Now I still see grains, it's still not sharp. Now I need to look at the image and higher the number on the diffuse layer to get to the maximum where it's smooth. Now, of course, in this case, I would render it in higher resolution, look at it closer. I think now on 50%, I would put it on 100%. It's not, it's on 100%, but it feels like, yeah. Okay, I guess I will stop it. And then look at the noise. I still see noise here, so I will increase this to 2. And again, the same I would do with the specular. Now we have specular, indirect. We could have just taken a specular layer to test how much samples I need for each one till I get a clear picture. And that way I get to the higher final render quality. The camera A is a general one. Now every one of those, of course, when you increase it, you are increasing the render times. And this one is the most to look at. In final render settings, what I would do is 6, for example, 6, 4, 4, and 2 and 2, for example, for this type of render. You can go higher, of course, so this would be in a bit nicer quality. Okay, now just to go again with a bit more on the render settings before we go into compositing and render a final image. So we created the AUVs. Now let's just look a bit at the AUVs again. So I created the diffuse here. I will remove it now. Remove AUV. Don't need it. So what I need is the AO, the Z. So basically the only AO is that we made custom. The rest are pre-created. Close. Great. Now we're gonna actually make a full quality render. So for example, let's say we did it in this, I have it saved from before, we won't wait for the time. So when you do a full quality render and you want to save it and bring it to After Effects, which is the next step, and we'll see what we do with all those layers and how we composite it, I would just make sure that you're rendering on 1:1 before you save it. So what I would do is afterwards, when I have it 1:1, I know this is the full render, this is not it of course, but I will just show the process. I would do save multi-layer EXR, and it's just saving it as an EXR layer. I already have it saved here, so I don't need to do it, but you give it a name, and that's that part for rendering. Now we have a lot of control afterwards in compositing, and we'll see this now, but we can also render another pass that we sometimes like to do, especially in animations, is an RGB pass. Basically, the same as the masks we did for the fingers or the nails and the horns. We can make everything in a solid color and render one pass which is just solid colors that tell us where objects are, and then compositing we can create masks out of that. Now this can save a lot of time, especially in animation. Let's say we did the whole full quality render and then we decide we want to change the color of the nails into a white color. We can still do that without re-rendering, just by using these masks. Okay, I'm going to close Maya now and open, or just minimize Maya and open After Effects. So I have After Effects open. My After Effects is a bit old, it's CS5, but it's the same thing in the new CS. Maybe it's located different, but just to see the principle. First, I will go into my, my project in my bin, and I will import the image. So I would say it was a few, nope. Number 2. Now one thing to notice when you're exporting, be careful not to have OpenEXR sequence. That's for image sequences. We just want an image, so OpenEXR, no sequence. You can also do a sequence and use the same stuff that we do for an animation, of course. Okay, so I do open. So I get a file, there's nothing in it. It's a float. Now I need to actually create something with it. So what I will do in After Effects is I will first go to File, and we should have here Create Pro EXR Layer Comps. This will split this up into compositions where we can work. In the new CS, maybe it's located somewhere else. I am not sure. Okay, then when I get a folder, and inside this folder I get first the EXR that I uploaded, I get the source comp, so basically a breakdown of each layer into its own comp, and a contact sheet where I see all the layers, and the assemble layer. Now this is where we're gonna put everything together. So I'll double click this layer to open it. And we get the render. Now this is the render I did previously with a bit more attention to the lights, and this is how we get the full results in After. Now what we have here actually is only the RGB, if I look at it. The other layers are below it. So now, by the way, in After, if you click on the circle here, you only isolate the layer. We are only looking at this layer. Now the way we work with this layers, or what we suggest to do, of course it's a starting point and everybody can do it in their own way, is to put the AO on top. So I'm dragging the AO layer on top and I see it here. Now the nice things with all those layers, how it works, because when we rendered in EXR and we have basically a raw image, I can double click this, this layer, go into the composition that it was created and select it. And in the effects control, I would have basically how to control the white and black points and the depth. So I would just want to get it a bit more, well, okay, this is in very large jumps. I want to get it a bit more bright, more precise, but maybe not so much. Let's say 0.8. This is jumps. Okay, so we'll keep it like this, maybe 0.9. I just want it slighter. Okay, just I need to brighten everything. Okay, bit better. 0.3. So I'm just tweaking a little bit the AO to soften it. Now this I can do because it's a raw, and I go back to my main compositions where I see the AO. Now the way I overlay the layers is the AO will come here in the mode as multiply. And basically now we got the AO on top of the main RGB layer. If we look at the difference, if I click, it really deepens it out and gives the details more emphasis. It might be too much. I can tweak this in the settings as I did before, or I can go and also just even after I tweak them enough, I can just go a bit with opacity and give this layer less opacity. For example, 85, a bit to open it up. Okay, so this is with AO. Now the next layers that come on top are the RGB, which is the color. I'm moving all the way to the bottom. Okay, so now what I have is on top is and also the subsurface. I'm moving above the RGBA, and I'm leaving the specular direct and indirect together. Here I will maybe move the direct on top. So the way these layers mix is, I think what we found to be the most convenient is linear dodge. For all three of them, and okay, so now we actually get to see the object. Now, of course, in every layer like this in After Effects, I have a lot of tools to play around with the quality of each one. I can isolate, see a layer, for example. If I look at the specular indirect, it's pretty much black. I don't really see it. So what I would do is first I would just select this layer, double click it as we did with the AO, select it, go to the black point and white point, and start maybe too aggressively playing with it. A bit, let's see if I can go minus. No, minus here won't work. So I'm going to take it really to 0.05. So you see I'm getting it a lot more, a lot stronger. I get the image. So now if I go back to my assemble, we can see the influence. By turning it on and off, I can see the influence. I can see it mainly on the wings. This is off. It might be too much. I already see that it is too much. I will just go back to maybe 0.1. It'll be enough. Okay, so of course after tweaking this more and working on it, now I would still work on the subsurface. I will isolate it, and I can notice every time what each layer does by clicking on it, and then I can go inside there, and of course I can also use all the levels and color tools that After Effects or Photoshop in that instance have. So let's say that we are happy. I'm not happy with the mask, but okay. Next thing, I want to use the Z render. So we rendered a depth map. So to work with that, I will have to first pre-comp all these layers that we work to create the as one. So this Z will only work on them as a whole. I'm selecting with Shift all of them. I will go to Layer, Pre-comp, and I will give it a name, Dragon Pre-comp, whatever. And I put it. So this opened to me this composition, but I'm going back to my assemble composition where I have the Dragon Recomp, Pre-comp, and the Z RGB layer. The Z I can actually hide it. I don't need to see it. But how I'll work with Z in this After Effects, there's also other tools in the newer ones even better. But basically I will use an effect on Dragon Pre-comp. I will use effect, blur. I think also other blurs have it, but I will go with a lens blur. And the lens blur is an effect, and it asks me to create this depth of field. You see now everything is blurry. I need to connect here the depth map layer. So that's, if I click on the drop down, that's the Z RGB layer 3, the one I have here. So once I connected it, I get everything blurred. But I actually want to control. But what I want to achieve with this, I want to have the tail a bit out of focus and the front in focus, for example. Now I also have different settings here, which are kind of like the aperture in a camera and a focal distance. I will, for now, not treat them. I will first have to actually, if we see everything is the same, it's as a flat, we still have a problem with the Z image that we created. So I have to click on this, double click to open it, and this is what I get. I get this flat white image, which is not what I want to. I think I have a lot more information here than I can see. Now here you'll have to go with quite large increments. So if you can see, when I started going around here, I start seeing the differences. This is brighter, this is darker, and by this I go what's further, what's closer. Now it could be that I'll need to invert this map afterwards, but we will see. So I'm just going a little bit. It's very hard to control it. Here's something like this. Let's say already here I see the differences. So if I go back now to my assemble, I should already see a bit of the results, and it's still very blurry. Let's just see if I invert it. Okay, so I will go back to the Z and maybe just now I have the tail in this. Let's see how this one works. Yeah, I think this should work. We just have to invert it back. Okay, so we have this sharp and this is blurry. Great. Now, of course, you need to tweak on this more. Now, the last thing I will do just to make a full render out of this is I'll create some kind of background. Now, of course, if you're working in Photoshop, you have other tools. You can do this all in Photoshop. You just need the EXR plugin. I am not sure if the new CS has it already inside it. If not, you just search the web and download it. I will just now create another layer, a new solid. I will make it a dark red. I think it's already set on something like that. I will click OK. I'm moving it below, and I will use just a mask for now. If I will click on this, I will get an eclipse tool, and I just want to get some kind of a bit of backlighting or a feather going around behind the dragon. Okay, so I just now will move the mask up, not like that, of course. I will move the mask somewhere around. Now what I'll do with this mask is I will go into the mask settings, and I will first of all add a lot of feather. So I'm going to really crank up so I'll get this kind of gradient. Maybe a bit too much. And I will play with the mask expansion. Nothing seems to be reacting, so here we go. So I'm creating this kind of a bit glow in the back, and I will feather it even more to soften this up. Okay, so we're getting a cast. That's it. For example, now I'm happy with the render. I'll go look at it in 100% resolution, of course. And I'm just analyzing a bit how it works. Now with this blur here, that it doesn't look sharp, that it looks a bit pixelated, this is probably with a Z. I need to soften it up, but of course also can be cleared up. I'm not so happy with the depth of field, but with this plugin you have a bit better ones. Cool. So now the last thing that I want to do with this, after I composited the image, is just to save it as a JPEG file or whatever. So I will just do composition, save frame as file. Now make sure to select in the current setting the best quality, full resolution, because otherwise it will render the resolution that's current, what exists. Nothing here so relevant. The type of file, I will click on JPEG for now. It's just for a preview. If I will find it, JPEG sequence, here we go. No crop. I don't need an alpha channel in my case. I will just take the RGB and give it a location and a name, and then you must just click render and you're done. So perfect. So this is pretty much the overview, the workflow that we did, and the only thing we will upload again, like I said, in hopefully a couple of days, we'll upload how to create the material, the shader. For now, for those with the shader that have a problem, you, of course, if you're using your own models, you can use other materials that you use and still work with the same system. Great, thanks.